Hi, welcome back to this YouTube playlist of Nomitech CostOS version 8. In this episode, we're going to be talking about user interface. So I'm going to take you around the features. It'll be very high level. We'll talk about some of the advanced features, but going into depth you can do from the training videos or other YouTube videos within this playlist. So look at the first tab, you see File, New, so blank estimate, a new project, or we combine several projects to make another project. Recent, the ones we've opened recently. Reports would be any reports templates you have or have created. They're blanked out because there are none here. You can import from project, Candy, other file, and from Institute Civil Engineer databases. Likewise, you can export to Excel, Office, IFC formats, Primavera, Cosmo, which is the benchmarking tool, and a couple of others. Settings, these tell you about how you set up your projects, which database you're using. The groupings you have, you can rename them, which I've done in one of them. BCIS Major Works, you have to restart the machine for this. Currencies that you want to use, there are no unit aliases, so if there is a particular unit which has a different name or slightly different pronunciation spelling, you can put them here and then map it across. Time units is to do with resourcing and how much a particular resource will work in a given time. Different team names, and finally plugins. About, if you need to find your version number, it's just there. So that's everything in this aspect. So I head through the actual ribbon. So a lot of those options in File were blank because I don't have an open project. It's the same across some of the other tabs here. So again, from here we can create a new project. The enterprise project structure is actually open, so that's why we can't open it again. No projects are open, otherwise we could close all of them. Group codes are looking at the actual work breakdown structure, so you can select one of them and you have all of these different options you develop over time and associate line items to them. Assemblies, this will be a list of your assemblies. We have one in there already. And going back, we have our independent sets of line items, and from them, if you bring them up from first principles, you'll have plant, labour, materials, consumables or other costs, actual subcontractors specifically, and the companies I work for. Here we have existing information. Here we can update to the existing information, and here we can extract information into Excel. If you were to continue, you could select a particular Excel sheet for import and then carry on from there. So I'm not going to do that. And global properties, which you saw a moment ago, tells you the defaults of various different areas. So we saw that from the first tab. So if we move on to tables and layouts, this is how you work around the different layouts that you can have. So this area here is extremely customizable. So if you want to add or remove columns, it's the same as doing the add or remove columns here. So there's two ways to do it. Because there are so many columns, you can do a search and the various different items will tell you where to find what, and then you transfer them across using, or take them out using those values. You can save particular layouts if you change your machines or hot desking, for instance. So now we're into the tables. You can actually add new line items specifically. You'd have to set them up. Not going to go into that. You can send to Excel, filter, so all of these buttons here. So this collapses the lot, which is also there, and that expands everything. You can hide sections, so you do not have to see everything, or you can isolate sections, so hide others. There we go. And you can load all items again. So moving on to the next tab, we need a project open. So if we go to one we've had earlier, just highlight that if you want to create different scenarios, this is called sub-projects or what-if scenarios, they would line up here and you can compare them differently. You just have to change the default to make whichever one active. Here is a list of permissions if you're using a collaborative method, and that's how you set the various permissions. Opening this project, we get to our line items. Opening this project immediately activates the Estimate tab. So with Excel worksheets, we can add a worksheet, and you can tell if the formula works in the same manner as an Excel worksheet would work if it were Excel. So they're literally identical functionality to Excel. Just to prove it, there you go. Close that. Add takeoff. So we can do GIS. If you want to look at those, that will be a different feature where you can do dots, lines, areas, volumes, and also get an auto trace along roads. So we've seen the 3D, 2D takeoff. It's 3D and 2D is again in another video where we can do a combination of 2D but then project elements and then actually just straight 3D elements. You can add items, but importantly here you can see just the range of different sources of these informations. So if you go to online, that actually activates another 6 or 7 different repositories from various different areas. The new one I've seen here is the UAE, and again external resources for something completely separate. So there's a lot of places you can grab this information. If you have a particular line item and you want to change its actual structure, this is where you would do it. Assign quantities, so this is if you have a dimension sheet, you take the total of one of the particular sections of that. You could actually use an equation-based function, again from the 2D, 3D takeoff you just saw, and also the GIS, just see. So if we had a particular line item, we can assign different resources again from specialist areas, locally, and all the other ones, and online. It does an auto match function should there be a mapping system available. You can review the resources that you got, but a lot of these are plugged values. So in this one it's just saying plant, but sometimes these will be made of many, many different items. We can find resources. So that's within this sheet. You can actually try and determine specifics. So if you wanted to look up carpenters, you would actually just look for labour. Okay, and then item code will find resources by keyword. So it might be contains. Clean up is items that aren't being used. Project variables again is another sheet. We can go to the editor, and that is just how someone sets up the summary sheets for all the different costs which can be imported into this sheet, but it's exported directly to Excel. So if, say, upper management or whoever's signing off the project, you would develop your sheet that is in accordance with the company standards and their logos, but the figures will be directly populated by CostOS. Just to mention, this is Excel in CostOS, and in the pipeline there is CostOS which will be in Excel as a plugin. So it can be used interchangeably in due course. Looking further down, we've got modify assemblies. In this particular exercise where I did this takeoff, we have 2 different assemblies which are taking the exterior wall and interior partitions. So they are actually split via this button and the assemblies. If we weren't happy with the assemblies, say there was a specification change to the type of brickwork or a blockwork had been introduced or the number of plasterboard sheets have been reduced or increased, you can actually go and modify them here. So they're not static items particularly, and you get the before and after cost comparison. You can see what it was and what it is now. It is dynamic. Once you create assembly, you're not stuck with those answers. From there, you got the ability to modify the quantities you got from a 3D or GIS situation. This is where you need to be a bit careful. Synchronizing rates is where you start passing information in bulk and overwriting things. So you do need to know what you're doing here. These are very helpful tools if you're doing global projects and trying to compare underlying variables. But you just note a caution, you need to know what you're doing with these because they can upset historic and a lot of other values. Finally, in here you have the quotation management. So if you've assigned different subcontractors, if we look at home, subcontractors, so you've created a load of these, you've associated the line items against them. This is where you would get quotes, compare quotes, and submit received quotes. So that is purely the subcontractor estimation bit. Moving on, visualize. So this requires a 3D model or 2D drawings to be available or used within the model. Here we have actually a 3D model. So if I open that, we can have a look around here and start finding what's going on with the various elements. Clicking on that wall, it shows you these various items have been associated with it. and again, you can look in your own particular project structure. So there's no coding associated with project WBS1, but they are actually assigned within the BCIS major works. Similarly, you could look at a petition and you get a different set of items associated with it. So this is looking at element by element and the items that have been assigned to it. So if these are built up from first principles, you would begin to be able to see different line items, how they're made, and how they apply to a single element in a building. So there's different ways you can actually view this information, but largely it's similar to a lot of the BIM packages you've seen before. So I'll close that one. Finally, tools and help. So function developments are an extremely advanced feature. This is where you can write bespoke script written coding aspects. So just to highlight what's going on, there's one here that's a rail one. It's actually throwing an error. So this is where you can do a world takeoff, I believe, yep, to get input values, and they would populate this latitude, longitude, and elevation. And just to show you that what kind of complexity is available, here are the inputs, and this is the mechanism that they are all used to obtain their different values on the outputs. So not trivial, but flexible if you know how to do JavaScript in this case. But I will move on from that. Quote templates is for the subcontractor quotes that you saw, and this is just literally where the templates would be created. Location factors, here we have Mendoza, Argentina, and you can set up different location factors. So this is how you compare projects which happen in different places, but it might be an identical building. Customizing columns you've seen before. This is how you'd actually change different names of columns to suit a particular language. So for instance, the obvious one is labour, spelt with a U in the UK, but the U is left out for the USA. So that is just a simple tweak, which may have an effect if you go to clients, because they might actually find that quite an issue for some reason. Global project variables template, we saw that before, and that's how you just set up effectively your cover sheets for reporting projects to a higher level of management. You can create a new template, you get lots of images and different projects, so this is effectively your image library. External database resources, this is where you can connect to different database resources depending on the project. So if you have your local version, if you go to a new project which has got many users, you might have to connect to their specific database for that particular project. Over here is the help content. You can have a look in training videos, the basic information about how to do different things. If you need online support, this is actually the portal that you'd have to go through to get official technical support. And I'd recommend using that if you get stuck. Thanks for listening. If anything was unclear, please let me know in the comments. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next episode.